I want to bring in Waleed Faris now, Fox News national security and foreign affairs analyst. Waleed joins us now on the phone. Waleed, thank you for taking the time. This is a big day for the Middle East. The agreement, it will be known, as the president just announced, as the Abraham Accord, known as the father of all three great faiths, they announced, symbolizing the unity of Muslims, Christians, and Jews. So how will those benefit here living in the United States?
First and foremost, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, to the 144,000 elect, and to the 1/3 of all Israelite men, women, and children that are coming back to these law, statutes, and commandments in these last days. So this is just a prophecy update, prophecy alert for those who haven't seen it already. There has been a peace deal, a major victory for U.S. foreign policy, right? So there's been a peace deal between the land of Israel and the UAE. In other words, the United Arab Emirates, right? So this is huge because there has been constant conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians. But because of their connection to the rest of the modern Middle Eastern world, this has always had implications in the Middle East, no matter what country is there, because of the tensions going on between over the land of Jerusalem, right? So this news is so prophetic. This is the purest prophecy. You can't get any more clear than this. Israel is starting to make a peace deal. So you're telling me since the beginning of time, there has been constant conflict over the land of Jerusalem, in the country so-called Israel, in the land of Israel, and now it's about to end? Now, let's get a map first, just in case you guys, just to give you an idea, a visual. All right, so we're gonna go to this map here, and this is a map of the UAE, United Arab Emirates, right? So you see, they're just at the south of Iran, right here, and then you got, zoomed out too far, and then you got is the land of Israel over here. So the conflict starts right over here in Jerusalem, right, or the West Bank, so to speak, and that is pretty much where Israel ends and the Arab nations begin, right? It's really the Palestinians, but it extends all the way through these other nations, right, in one way or another, whether it's through direct lineage, or it's because of allies, or because of business and foreign affairs that are going on between those countries. The conflict really starts here, right? So what happened was Israel struck a deal with the United Arab Emirates, and what that's going to do, it's going to trigger some kind of response through the rest of the Middle Eastern world. So imagine how the Arabs over in the West Bank feel about this. They're probably the most upset, if not Iran, right? Because Iran has had issues with Israel as well. So this is sort of like a flight moment for the entire world, right? And it may seem like a good thing that it's a peace deal, but if you understand the scriptures, you understand that this is prophecy, because there is no peace in the land of Israel. So we're first going to get a scripture to support that, and that would be Isaiah chapter 62 and verse 6. This is pertaining to the land of Israel. I have set watchmen upon thy walls, O Jerusalem, which shall never hold their peace day or night. Ye that make mention of the Lord, keep not silence. Verse 7. and give him no rest till he establish, until he make Jerusalem a praise in the earth. Right? So you got to understand here, this is spiritual. These watchmen are spiritual, right? These are watchmen that have always been in that land, ensuring that there's constant conflict, that nobody can take over the land of Israel and have peace, basically, right? So these spirits are made to always be in contention in that area, and that is why there has never been peace in the land of Israel since we left out of there. In coming back there, we know through the scriptures that the Most High Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai, he's going to deliver us back to the land of Israel. When that happens, then there shall be peace. And that is why we call Yahweh Shai the Prince of Peace. So this peace deal is a false deal, right? What can we expect from a peace deal if we understand that it's not going to come except for by Yahweh Shai? It's very simple. So the fact that they're proposing peace, then you got to understand, well, we know there's not going to be peace, so what's actually going to happen? Is somebody going to double cross this deal? Is Iran going to jump the gun? Or is something going, are the Arabs and the Palestinians in the West Bank, are they just going to go for it, right? We don't know what's going to happen, but we know that there will not be peace in that land until Yahweh Shai comes back. Let's get another scripture. This is the book of 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 3. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. So what are they talking about right now? Peace and safety, right? Starting with this peace deal, right? Because when you have a peace deal, then you're ensuring safety, right? You're avoiding conflict, you're avoiding war. But through the scriptures we know, when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them. In my last video, when I mentioned that this place will never be the same again, that's because once something seems like it's going to get better, we find out something else gets worse. So it's like quicksand. This place keeps falling deeper and deeper into more trouble, because we have things going on in this country, but meanwhile there are things that are impacting the world globally, right? Such as this peace deal. So how can a country, when it's going through something, right, be able to take on, bigger issues, so to speak, right, at the same time, right? This is a very peculiar and bizarre time that we're living in. We're living in a time where a lot of people are experiencing things that they've never seen before, right, on different levels. And it just so happens that, over the past month, there's been all these detonations of things, like all these things are blowing up. It's almost like this place is starting to erupt, right? Not to mention volcanoes are erupting. Things are popping off right now. Let's go into some of this video.
Julie, this is a historic day of epic proportion, and I'll explain why. And that's a major victory for U.S. foreign policy, and obviously for the president in this case. We're talking about the UAE, which was not occupied as a launching pad to do the peace agreement, as for Egypt or for Jordan or for the PLO before. So this peace agreement is going to create an alliance between two allies. The UAE has been our ally for decades. We have a presence there. We have a strategic cooperation with them. And the Israelis are a historic, of course, ally to the United States. When you put both of them together in the equation, you're going to get the following. Number one, you're going to have an activation of the peace between Israelis and Palestinians. It doesn't matter at this point in time if this is not going to yield immediate peace processes between Israelis and Palestinians, but the UAE, as a major player in the Gulf, is going to be a driving force on the economic, diplomatic, political level. There is a large Palestinian community that actually lives in the UAE and profits from the UAE. All of that is going to be very helpful. And as it was said earlier, I mean, the big strategic alliance between UAE and Israel is going to change the game in the Middle East with regard to those bad actors, including the Iranian regime on the one hand, but also all other jihadists. I'm just going to remind our viewers that Abu Dhabi or the UAE was the first Arab country to announce the longest list of terrorist organizations.
You see that? So the UAE is setting a precedent in the Middle East by saying, you know what, we're going to step up and we're going to make peace with Israel. Who's coming with us, right? So it's going to put pressure economically on these other Middle Eastern nations, right, who have vested interest in the UAE, right? So they're all impacted by this, right? And it's spiritual because they're relatively the same people, arguably. So they're all being gathered through this peace deal, right? So that's where we're gonna go to the book of Joel. Okay, the book of Joel, chapter 3 and verse 2. This is the book of Joel, chapter 3 and verse 2. I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. You see that? So this is the beginning of that. How is the Lord going to gather all these nations? Well, look at it. The proof is in the pudding, right? Well, first off, let's go into the valley of Jehoshaphat, which means judgment, right? Of Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai. All right, so we have Google Earth here, and we're going to go to the Mount of Olives. All right, so now there's really not much of a debate on where the valley of Jehoshaphat is. Throughout the Bible, there are several men named Jehoshaphat, even a king and priest with the same name in his tomb, coincidentally happens to be in the same region where a lot of Israelites agree on where the valley of Jehoshaphat is. So if we look at the so-called Jewish encyclopedia, and we look down here, it says it has continued to be so used amongst Jews, Christians, and Mohammedans who identify it with the valley of Kidron, the present Wadi Sidimarian, which separates Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives, right? So if we go back to Google Earth, we see we got Salakia, we got the Temple Mount here, right? The Western Wall. So this is pretty much where Jerusalem ends. And then up north, Western Wall is right here. The Mount of Olives is right here. So what this is saying is the Valley of Jehoshaphat is where Jerusalem is separated from the Mount of Olives. So you will see this Western Wall right here. So it would only make sense that this war is going to happen right at the front door of the Holy Land. I mean, the Most High can do what he wants to do, and what better battle, to have than to be at home for your homecoming, right? So it's going to be right at the front lawn of Yasharahla. And it's not limited to the front yard, because as you can see, all these nations are going to come up against Israel, right? So if we zoom out, you can see this extends far, and then you can kind of see where the land separates here, but this can actually extend far into the Middle East, right? The Valley of Jehoshaphat is primarily here, but all of this might as well be a part of that same valley, right? So this is where the Most High will plead with all the nations, right, while delivering the saints. So another thing they mentioned, again, they're talking about how there's going to be, camaraderie between Israel, Judaism, Muslim, and Christian faiths around there. They're talking about how they're going to be unified, but when has that ever happened, right? In history, every time nations try to unite, something happens before they do, and we know that from the scriptures. We know that during the times of Genesis, during in the Tower of Babel. Actually, let's go get that. This is the book of Genesis, chapter 11, verse 6. And the Lord said, "Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they began to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do." This happened during the times of old. It happened during the book of in the book of Maccabees. Let's go get it. This is First Maccabees, chapter 1 and verse 41. "Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people." So you see that even during the times of the Greeks, this happened before, when Antiochus wanted everyone to give up their religion, right, so that they could be one people and have peace, right? And what happened? The Maccabees, who were Israelites, stood up for the Most High, and they kept the commandments, and he delivered them from that situation. So guess what? We're at it again in 2020, right, with this peace deal, because this is supposed to unite nations, right? So no matter what side you're on, whether you're with Israel or whether you're with the Arab nations, this involves everyone, right? So this is very huge prophecy going on in Babylon the Great. So hopefully this is it. Hopefully this gets everything popping, and that means the Lord is knocking on the door as we speak. And that's really all I wanted to get into. So with that, I want to give all praises to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai. If one person was edified, the job has been done. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to keep this word going out. And till next time, Shalom.